that they're going to disappear, or worse, if they go to hospital and don't come back, that they've died. So the fear of their parent dying is actually quite common.
So today with me is Rose Cuff, who is the founder of the Satellite Foundation. So thank you very much, Rose, for doing this. We just had some technical issues and we've probably gone for 5 minutes. But just in a short summary, you are one of the founders of the Satellite Foundation, who's been around since 2009. So anyone who's listening to this podcast will hear it mentioned a bit, and we've had Brad McEwen on before and Addie and people involved with Satellite. So maybe you want to talk about this foundation or this charity that you created back in 2009 and what you've been trying to achieve with it over the years.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Joel. So yes, I in 2009 I had already been working in the area of a fairly new area of looking at what experiences of children and young people were in families where a parent or carer has a mental illness, and it was pretty new. And I was sort of that became my sort of focus of work. And part of what I did was develop some co-develop some peer support programs for children and young people, sort of in the late 90s and early 2000s. And because there was a change in funding focus around that time, and in 2007 there was a sort of real risk that the peer support programs that many of us had been working on to provide a space for young people to get together and talk about what their experiences were in danger of being lost. And so naively, I thought, oh, well, we'll just we'll found a charity and we'll do the work to provide the programs, and not having a clue what that meant. But anyway, we did. And myself and another person, Verena, we were the sort of, not the drivers, but there were many people in Melbourne at that time who were concerned. And so that's how it started. And we didn't have any money at all. And since 2009, until we received some money from the Commonwealth in 2019, and then again recently from the Royal Commission, it was an organisation really run entirely on the goodwill of people voluntarily. So most people like myself had a full-time job and ran Satellite. And yeah, what is extraordinary is that we have now come to a place where we can really invest properly in both time and money, and in young people being part of our organisation. It's sort of it's really like a dream for me personally.
You specifically mentioned in the Victorian Royal Commission of Mental Health, your organisation. So how did that feel to have this recognition after, let's say, a decade of doing this? Or more? Yes,
it was really. I say to people, you had to sort of peel me off the ceiling when I saw that Satellite had been named, and the FATME program as well, the Families Where Parents Have a Mental Illness, which was my life work alongside Satellite. And I guess it's come at a time when the voices are loud enough, not just my voice, but many voices in this space. And people like you, Joel, who talk about what it's like, the good, the bad, and all the rest in between of growing up in a family where one or both parents have got significant mental health challenges. So I think the Royal Commission came at a time when that was, it was shifting. There was a deepening understanding of what that was like for children and young people, and a deeper understanding of what might be helpful, and what was missing. And I think the Royal Commission in their work heard very powerful stories. They heard a bit of the truth, and I think that touched the people gathering information. So a couple of people in our Satellite community also talked to the Royal Commission, to one of our ambassadors, Justin Hazelwood, and one of our young graduates, Dana Healy. So it's about having big enough voices, I think, and it just came, the timing was just great. It's transformative. This kind of funding and this kind of focus is transformative.
So for people who don't know, what was done prior to, let's say, your involvement in FATME, but for example, what was done prior with children who had a parent with bipolar schizophrenia? Because from my experience, there was nothing really in place at all. And this was in Perth Metro. And then later on in regional country, it was always just family support or foster home, or you'd be human services or whatever it is. But there was nothing at all that I was aware of. Or so what was in before satellite? What was the sort of there in place for children or for young people?
Look, it was, there wasn't absolutely zero, but there was very little, and it was where there were programs and supports and recognition. It was patchy, and certainly a lot of young people's and families' experiences were pretty negative. One of the things that was missing was them being identified, and that's where the FATMI program in particular, lots of other initiatives have tried to change that. So in an adult mental health service or an adult service where it's the parent or the carer who's receiving the care or treatment, there wasn't a recognition that you have to ask about whether this person's got children. It's not a, or sometimes I might, but really it should be part of routine practice. Because then only then can you find out what's happening within the family and how much children might be impacted or not by what's happening in their family, and know what to do. And to also, people weren't also asking children and young people what their experiences were. So there was a lack of inquiry at a routine level. And that came from, I think, a lot of people working in services, a fear of saying the wrong thing, or certainly my experience way back when I first got interested in this work in 1994 was in an adult mental health clinic, and me very naively and without thinking about it asking a parent, this is in rural Queensland, "Oh, I see you've got children, tell me about them." And her experience had been, if she talked about her children, that she would be judged and that she would potentially lose custody of her children. So there was a lot of anxiety about what to say, who to say it to, who to involve, from everyone really, and leading to some negative experiences, I think.
Yeah, it's quite astounding when you look at it logically. You'd think it'd be like just be standard procedure, because at the end of the day, even though you're the person's being treated with the mental illness, if you've got young kids involved, they should be, you'd think, the priority of the parent and also any government organisations in place. But you're right, it was never, one of my mum's concern was, we'd be taken away or whatever by various people. So it was sort of, put on a good, that you're a responsible parent, but, there's nothing really. It was very, and I feel for the people asking the questions, because there's not much they can do besides ask a question. If they don't get a truthful response or something like that, there's nothing much more they can do.
There's also, I think, a worry that if a worker does ask how you're going home or how are your children, that if it's really bad, they won't know. Well, back then they wouldn't know where to get support from, because there weren't the kind of things we have in place now. So it was like, well, what do I do with that information? It's really hard. And for parents and carers, a lot of the ones that certainly that I've had contact with over many years, they're wanting to protect their children, so they don't talk to their children about what's happening, because it's really hard to talk about, your mental health. But also that if they don't talk to the kids, somehow they won't know, and they'll be shielded from that. But as I'm sure you would say, children are extraordinarily observant and noticing little people, humans, and they notice everything.
Yeah, well, I think once you get taken into a psychiatric ward, things are different, right? So it's I understand completely exactly what you said. It completely resonates with me. I'm sure other people are in the same situation. I find it also quite interesting that I didn't know this, but Greg Hunt, the Federal Minister for Health, had a mother with bipolar and who was regular institutionalized. And I'm sort of thinking, these sort of people, and it was only something that came out, I think it was this year or something like that. And I found it astounding how the Federal Minister for Health had this sort of situation, and it was only found out about this sort of year. And you'd sort of be thinking, well, where's this extra awareness or money, or for your organisations like this from a federal level, being when you've got someone who's in the Federal Health Minister who's actually grown up in this situation exactly. And I've actually asked him to try and come on. Haven't had a response yet. I'm sure he's busy with a lot of other stuff, but my goal is to get, because there's just so many of these people, and even though now we've got these things, but there's a lot of people in this situation. What I had and people you deal with, and they've been prominent positions to actually make a real difference. So yeah, well, hopefully they can start coming forward a bit more.
Yeah, and look, I think there's many reasons, as you would know, why people don't come forward, particularly in public life. And again, that has changed dramatically since I first worked in mental health many donkeys years ago. That the sort of potential shame or the difficulty in articulating what it's like and using words even like mental illness and mental health has changed, but it's not completely. There's still a degree of I guess it's stigma and discrimination that can occur when you do talk about it, and that's also linked to your potentially your gender and if you're a person of color, or where you kind of live and where you work and how that's perceived. It's very easy for people to hang their hat on a negative connotation of mental health or mental illness, and sort of attribute things happening to poor mental health, and that's not always the case. So I think people understandably hold back sometimes from talking about these things.
So from the Royal Commission in Victoria, what findings or what's relevant to you in satellite moving forward? Obviously, there's been acknowledgement, and you've been specifically mentioned you got funding. But what can you see from that's going to be put in place to really help? Because I know that they've accepted all the recommendations, but I know there's a time frame with these things and all these sorts of stuff. So what's your sort of your view on that whole thing?
Look, the final report on the work of the Commission was an absolutely incredible undertaking, like absolutely extraordinary piece of work. And the investment by the Victorian government over 10 years, 3.5 billion or something over 10 years, is a deeply, deeply serious commitment to changing the system. And one of the things that's been going on for many, many years has been it's been a very fractured service system and very siloed system and that's just the mental health system. When you bring in other systems or sectors, if you like, that intersect with mental health, like child and family and multicultural services, perinatal services, youth service, there's so many. Everyone was sort of bouncing around in their own bubbles a little bit. So one of the things that I think is really, and the people who find that very difficult are the end users. So particularly young people or people who are perhaps feeling vulnerable. If we find it hard to navigate the system, imagine how hard other people find it who don't know anything about it. So one of the things I think will change over time will be that the system will be more integrated, easier to navigate. It will be a service system driven by people with lived experience. Probably that's the biggest change that will happen through this reform agenda, is that lived experience and people with a lived experience or expertise or experiences of either a mental health challenge themselves or somebody they care about will be at the centre of the work. So there's going to be a new Mental Health Act, new adult and child and youth mental health services, wellbeing centres, family and carer hubs, new training for the lived experience workforces, and I think and it's happening very, very quickly as we speak. The system is being changed to reflect what will be, we hope, will be a fairer, more equitable, more joined up service system. And the first, very exciting new appointment of the new executive director of the lived experience branch of the department, Mary O'Hagan from New Zealand, is having an executive member of the Department of Health is just really exciting. So we use the word exciting a lot. It's also a huge amount of work. But I think where we sit with Satellite is that we're a non-clinical service. We're a community-based organisation, and my intention, very clear intention, is to work very closely with all the other organisations that either have or potentially have contact with children and young people in families where there is mental illness, to make sure that we don't, the past because it wasn't a very joined up service, you'd often see, services being duplicated, or there'd be crossover, or there'd be things, not very time efficient. And so I think one of my passions is to make sure we don't do that, and that we speak to each other, that we coordinate and we collaborate in a really, deep and meaningful way, which is in line with the Royal Commission as well. Recommendations. There were 65 recommendations, so there's a lot of work to be done.
Definitely a lot. I was going to say, how do you help a family, or how do you help get to the children where the parent might not want help? So I think it was like, if this was with my mum, I guarantee she wouldn't have got us help. We would have been just normal, where everything's fine, whatever. So how do you get to those young people, or to those kids? Is it something where you go via the school, or how do you get into assist, or how do they get into assist these people?
Yeah, it's a great question. And there's many answers to that question. I mean, my ideal would be that there is no wrong door. There is no place, there's nowhere that doesn't know about organizations like Satellite or other organizations that provide support and information. And that whatever point in their journey, that Satellite works with children and young people, right up to adulthood, really, they would know where to go to get support, whether they get it through. We're very busy on social media, because that's really where a lot of young people now go to get information. So they might Google, where can I get help? My mum's in hospital or in a psychiatric unit, or they might, social media is probably the first thing that we're working very hard to make sure that we're noticed, and that young people can find us. And then when they find us, they know we have, there's a phone number, there's an email, a lot of them message us on social media via Instagram message or Facebook.
Are you getting many
message.
People use that? Are many people reaching out with that? Good.
Yeah, they're really starting to now. It's great. And so that's one very clear pathway for young people. We're starting to build relationships with the schools system, the education department, and that's really a big piece of work, but it's a very important piece of work, because schools in Victoria, part of the recommendations that from the Royal Commission was more support in schools. Won't go into that now, but lots more support in schools. So liaising with the people that intersect with students, whether it's wellbeing staff, teachers, assistant principals, so they know who we are, and other organisations, so they don't wring their hands in despair and say, I don't know where I can get support for this young person. Plus, we also have an increasing database of service providers across child, youth, family, mental health, social and emotional well-being. So building our database of supports and organisations so that they know, and building relationships, Joel. Like just as we grow, because we are growing, we're recruiting, not too quickly, but and having people who can go out and just talk about what we do. Just say, look, can I come and have a coffee and talk about what we do? Because often a friendly face talking about the kind of programs that we offer and resources is much more meaningful than an email in their inbox, to be honest, because everyone's so busy. Talking at events like, things like Mental Health Week, Carers Week. I'm hoping next year to have to co-host some sort of youth summit where we can talk about the work we do. So it's just getting out there and talking, walking the talk and talking the talk, really.
Now, do you have any specific advice for young people who have a parent with a mental illness who might be listening to this? What's some specific actionable things? I know there's a lot, but where can they go to maybe find information, or what can they actually do if they're struggling to deal with their parent, which a lot of them might be?
Yeah, there's many answers to that. I mean, the first thing I would say to that young person is that you're not alone. There are many young people out there who are in situations where they also have a family member, a parent, carer, or sibling, or another, or a friend, or someone they care deeply about that is struggling with their mental health, and that you, as that young person, are trying to get help for. It's important for young people, I think, to know where they can get immediate support from if they're really worried about their own mental health or that of their loved one or the person they care about. So we do talk a lot about making sure they have safety plans and they have crisis support numbers in their phone or nearby so that they can access that, because, satellite isn't a crisis service. It's at the moment anyway, we only operate during Monday to Friday, roughly 9 to 5, but so I would say you're not alone, and reach out for help, and you can do that by ringing someone. Check on social media. Remember that if you're the young person providing support, your mental health is really important. So sometimes the analogy, put your own oxygen mask on first. And that's very hard to do when you're providing care. And I'm sure you would know about that, Joel, when you were younger.
I still am providing care.
You can
still, absolutely.
You're still providing care.
So what people don't realise with this is it's not a thing you get to 18 and then it
goes
stops.
on.
It goes on until the person, for a long, long time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when you're younger, I think as we get older and mature, we're able to make those we can understand more deeply that it is important to look after yourself, and we do deserve. Can we practice some self-compassion? But as a young person, as a teenager, or even as a young adult, it can be really hard to. I think a lot of young people think they're being selfish if they ask for help, or if they, say they need some respite or they need support, that it's or look after themselves, like take time out for themselves. That has somehow been selfish, and it's not. It's actually it's being compassionate to yourself, and in doing so, you're able to then keep providing that role in a way that's sustainable and manageable. I think the other thing I would say is, for a young person listening, is think about who else you can talk with in your immediate circle of friends or family or school or community that can hear you, because and it might be someone like Satellite that you speak to for the first time, but there might be somebody else, a really compassionate teacher, somebody in your local community that you can talk with. And one of the reasons I think while some young people don't share their stories is for fear of being disloyal to their family member. And that's a very real, and you might be able to comment on this, but that's a very real fear that, if they talk about, how they feel, which is a myriad of feelings. They might be feeling really worried, but also angry or frustrated or exhausted. Also can feel, that they're doing a really positive thing in helping their family member. But everyone deserves to be heard. Everyone deserves a place for someone to hold space for them and validate how they feel and validate their concerns. And sometimes that's enough. Not to have someone provide immediate solutions, but someone to hear. And that's where some of those helplines are helpful, the online the chat lines, or, that you can just say how you feel.
And what about the, I was going to say, the outcomes of children who don't have any support? Like, I know, because the whole reason why there needs to be investment in this is because you know about all the studies and all that sort of stuff, where you have children who have a parent with this, they're more likely to have mental illness themselves, or more adverse outcomes regarding not going to university, or more increased likelihood to be drugs, alcohol, whatever it is. So what, from your experiences, if you don't get involved in this, what's the sort of outcomes for people?
Well, there's two answers to that. One is what the research, and you're dead right, what the research, which is extensive now, both here and internationally, tells us about in the absence of the kinds of supports that we think are really important for young people, which is access to information, getting peer support, getting positive experiences, addressing their own mental health, attending school, getting support to attend school, having hobbies and interests, and all the things that we know are really helpful, and having some agency in their lives. That if young people don't get that, they are not, and I've seen this, then sometimes they get to a point, a fork in the road as they reach adolescence, where they, in the absence of support to make sort of positive choices, and it all feeling pretty hopeless, really, and feeling not very positive about their own future, and maybe beginning to experience their own mental health challenges, which is very common in adolescence, emerging mental health challenges, then they can go down a fairly precarious road where they stop attending school, they withdraw from family, or there's much more conflict at home, where they, maybe engage in more risk-taking behaviours. Whereas if they do have those supports to help them to make their own more positive choices, then the outcomes are better. And if you think about that, without support, they're more than twice as likely to go on to develop significant mental health challenges themselves. And when I say challenges, I mean mental health, the spectrum of what that means. It could be substance use, it could be mental health, it could be a whole lot of things. They're more likely to not, if they've got support, they're more able to sort of take a different path in adolescence. And I think role models are really important. That's where I've seen younger children, say, before they hit adolescence, coming into contact with an older adolescent or a young adult who's perhaps been through that experience of making those choices. And that's an extraordinary thing to see when you see younger kids looking up at the older ones with similar experiences, and they might be at uni, or they're studying for a trade, or they've got some ideas and hope for the future. That's a very, very powerful, it's an intervention in itself, I think. And one thing I'm really interested in next year is developing some kind of mentoring program that Satellite would support with some of our graduates of our programs. So, I think it's some of the young people that I've known for many, many years now, that I met when they were children, who are now in their late 20s, have gone through those decisions and that fork in the road. And so many of them are doing incredible things now, and say that it's those kind of difficulties, but with support, shaped the person they are now. And they see themselves as really highly compassionate, caring, patient individuals who value difference because of the role they had in a sort of caring type role, but they didn't feel they were on their
plus
own.
They have a hell of a lot of resilience. I think resilience is one of the number one things which indicates success. But I was going to say, it's great because you've seen people from, you said, very young age, and they've gone, you've seen right through their adolescence to what they come out on the other side. So you're involved through the whole stage, and I presume you'd have a lot more positive outcomes with people involved than you would negative who are involved in these processes with Satellite.
Yes, I think, look, you're right. You're dead right that there's children and young people are innately resilient. We know they have a resilience that we don't always understand, or we take seriously, but they are. And hand in hand with that can go some young people find the challenges overwhelming and can be overcome by them. So there's a number of, you said there's probably at least 6 young people who I met when they were first between 6 and 10 years old, and who are now in their late 20s, and I'm still in contact with them. And some of them have come back to be part of Satellite, and that's and certainly not attributing that's all due to their hard work, and all due to their perseverance, and all due to their reaching out and seeking the kind of help that they want, when they want it and when they need it. That's the other thing I think that the service system, it's like mental illness, it comes and goes. It's sort of the person's health ebbs and flows, and similarly the need for support ebbs and flows, and so we need to be really responsive to what is happening in someone's lives across, and for families too, across the lifespan of families. And how it's understood in families that, we're grappling, and like many people, with the terminology that's used, the language that's used around mental illness, mental health, trauma, social and emotional well-being, how mental illness is understood in different cultures and different families. It's not a one-size-fits-all language. So I think being really mindful of that, even just talking about young carers, is not something that fits easily for some young people.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, it's an interesting term. Like I remember hearing that term used for me, and I was just like, I don't think of myself. My mum's still making me food or doing the laundry. Like I could never found it the other way. But when I look back on it now, like it was a bit of an emotional incest that she was doing to me regarding, when I look back on things now. So it's when you get a bit of perspective when you're a bit older, you might realize that a bit more. But I was going to say, what's a specific success story from Satellite that you're proud of that's come through your programs?
Oh, wow. I guess a more recent, there's a couple that come to mind, and I guess one of the more recent ones has been a young person. She's a young adult, and it's interesting. I think the heartstrings take us to people often think about children, and children are very much part of our what we do and whom we seek to support. But I think, as you were saying, maybe Joel, that it's when you get a little bit older that you start to think, oh, hang on a sec, that was hard, or what was going on there? Like, I feel I was doing a lot over the years and not really understanding what that meant and how that's impacting on your life as you get into later adolescence and start making choices for yourself. And so there was a young person who came, so she's been in with Satellite for just over a year now, about 14 months, and joined one of our online programs called Satellite Connect, which is a 6-week program. So this was, during COVID, and had never really talked about her family's intersection with mental health and what that meant for her, both her own mental health and the impact of her parents' mental health on her as a person, as a sort of how she identified growing up as an adult, and was very nervous about joining. Like, really had never been to us before, really nervous about what it meant, about disclosing how she felt, about that it would be just a whole lot of people talking about how terrible life is. That's something often people say. I don't want to be in a room just with everyone just saying it's all terrible, because it's not always all terrible. But also just not wanting to be disloyal to her parent in saying, well, I'm going to go and talk to these people because, you've got a mental illness and you're the cause of all my problems, which is nothing that is completely the furthest from how we engage with people. But that's, I think, how she kind of felt it. Anyway, she managed to, with a lot of sort of gentle support from us and affirming before she even joined the program, just validating what she might be feeling and what her parent might be feeling. And it's just entirely optional. Just come to the first one. Anyway, she did, and is now a really integral part of the organisation. Has done 2 programs and come away with us, and is training to be a peer leader, and has done some work. We often do consultations with young people about a particular topic, so is very much embedded in the work that we do, and also with very close friendships with other young people I think that's been a really very, very positive experience for her, and I think I'm hoping will sort of equipping her with some of or building on the strengths and tools she has already.
There's a very significant impact, Rose, because like for me, like if that doesn't happen for that person, like and they get to adulthood and they still have this mindset where don't want to tell anyone, all that sort of stuff, like it can be very, very negative, and just it's a very bad life outcome having that always in the back of your mind. Because what people don't realize with children who have a parent mental illness, it's like because you're in your situation, you don't know anything else. Like the only thing you might know else is if you go to a mate's house or whatever, oh, they've got a mum and a dad, they're pretty normal, they've got jobs or whatever. You compare yourself to them, but you sort of know your situation as your situation, and that's it. But when you get older as well, like you just don't realize how much that situation affects your behaviors or your self-esteem or your risk-taking ability, all this sort of stuff. until you start actually seeking out help online, whether it be with YouTube videos or coming across an organisation like yours and go, oh, wow, there's all these other things involved. So it's just amazing to hear, because it's such a direct impact on one person, which Satellite has had on that young person, which, you know, it's definitely, I would say, from without knowing her, has changed that person's life. Like, it's definitely changed that person's life, rather than being a wishy-washy, call this number or whatever. This thing has probably changed this person's life moving forward.
Yeah, I think you're so right, Joel, and I think as well it's the power of those relationships that those young people, when they get into, and this was all online, into a space where they meet other young people who get it. And we have, when we do Zooms in COVID, we developed our own sign language for young people to be a bit more interactive in the Zoom room. And one of them is the connect one, so where you make a sign on the screen. And sometimes the whole session will be so much of that going on, because there would just be this overwhelming thing. Yeah, I get that. That's exactly how it is for me. And it's really, it's very validating. And I think you mentioned self-esteem or self-worth, that because a lot of young people, children, particularly children, can feel like they've caused the problem, that they're the cause of their parents' mental illness. And that's a very, very tough place for a child or a young person to be in, to feel they've caused it. And then they have to fix it. So part of what we do in Satellite and many other organisations who are working with young people in this space, like the programs that the FATME program runs, is writing the misinformation. You know, that it's not your fault, that you're not alone, that you didn't cause it, that you can't actually fix it.
Well,
So any young people sitting out there listening, you didn't cause it, you can't fix it, you're not alone. And you are all the young people I've met over the years are just incredibly resilient, and also incredibly brave, courageous.
And what's your opinion on psychologists then, who are treating the mother or the father? Because what I remember is we never got even told what bipolar was from a young age, right? We just knew bipolar, we knew this thing, but you don't sort of want to know about it too much, because you maybe just want to avoid the reality of it. But you know that this is a condition, when someone gets this way, they go away for 3 to 4 months or whatever it is, and that's what you know. What's your opinion on how young people are educated then, or when's the right time to actually sit them down and go, right, if your parents got schizophrenia or BPD or whatever it is, and how does that make them aware about the condition, or actually educating them? What's that process like, or what should it be like?
This is a question I've been asked many times over the years. I mean, my personal position is that it's never too young to find a language to help children understand things like you aren't alone, and reassurance that their parent particularly is going to hospital, or something very big has happened, that reassuring the best you can, either the other parent or a grandparent or a worker, that your parent is safe and is getting help. So there's lots of key messages that we can provide, that should be being provided to children, like a treating psychologist or a doctor or whoever. There's really no, and now, because there's so many good resources out there to help facilitate that process of children gaining understanding. There's videos, there's books, there's YouTube clips, there's I'm not spruiking this because it's all free, but there's an article that I wrote called Talking with Children and Young People About Mental Illness on our website, which gives just some guides about how somebody might engage in those conversations. In the Satellite space, we have found that that those kind of conversations can happen after there's been some sort of connection with somebody else, another young person, and there's some sort of there's been a workshop or a program where they have felt listened to, they have felt connected, connected and heard, and have had a positive experience. And then there's some readiness within the family to have those, what you might call, psychoeducation conversations, where a child does get explained what is bipolar. And there's some great books around, picture books, and so what is bipolar, and what is schizophrenia, what is depression, what does it mean to have what does it look like, what have you noticed, asking children what they've noticed is a really great because they are such noticing, they notice everything. And so hearing it in their language and in their words, I've always found really helpful, because they're spot on. And then you can build the conversation around that about, well, what is that like for you? And often very young children have spoken to me about if their parents, say, is experiencing depression and withdrawn and spending a lot of time on their own, in bed, or less available for their child, that children will come to the conclusion that, or crying a lot, that they're going to disappear, or worse, if they go to hospital and don't come back, that they've died. So the fear of their parent dying is actually quite common, unless they're told that that's not what's going on. That because they've experienced death in the family recently by their, perhaps a grandparent or somebody else going to hospital. So there's all these sort of assumptions that we think children won't come to their own conclusions, whereas we know, in fact, that they do come, and what I'm sure you did as well, come to their own, in the absence of being told they'll make it up for themselves.
Yeah, we had a brutal indoctrination. We were sort of taken, when she got taken to the psychiatric ward the first time, we were sort of taken to the psychiatric ward called Greylands in Perth, and just basically paraded through there and taken to a locked room where she's just had ECT and she's sitting down, and that's sort of, see your mum, and, that's her going to help her get better, and that's really it. So I presume there's a lot of other people who had that, but there was no consolidation of information post that. Like, there was no sort of debrief as to what's going on. Whereas I think that's what's sort of needed, as you said. Kids know a lot what's going on, regardless if they're 6 or 7, and that's the sort of time where you do want to provide them with maybe information that's a bit more above them. But at least I think when they look back on it, they go, yeah, at least someone's tried to explain it exactly to me and not talk down to me and whatever it is. But I presume that happens a lot, because the way I sort of viewed it is that, I don't know if it's still the case, but the person who's got the mental health condition, they want to do anything they can to get that person better, and that's fine. But a lot of the time, if there's children involved, that will mean getting children to go and see that person in a not good state in some facilities and things like that.
I think that would have been a very distressing experience for you and for other children who have experienced that. And I feel very sad when I hear that. And I also know that it is changing, it has changed, and that it's everyone's work. It's everyone's business to make sure that children get given the right information. They get ways of staying connected with their parent that are really safe, and that the parent and the child or children feel. It might be writing letters, it could be phone calls, it could be emails, it could be photos, it could be drawings. And the FATME program, again, is doing a lot of work in this area in terms of sort of providing information and training to workforces that might be the very people that would be facilitating contact from a child to their parent in hospital. So there's a lot of work still to be done to make that ongoing, where possible, the threads of connection are held whilst the person is unwell or in hospital or receiving treatment and care, so that it's a win-win, because the parents want the best for their children and they want to stay in contact with their children, but it's got to feel safe and inclusive and also appropriate to their age and their cultural background, and it's a whole lot of stuff. But it's possible. I've seen it done really well. I've seen it done just beautifully, where there's children are briefed beforehand, that you work out who's going to take them to the ward, if it's a ward. The staff are briefed. The children have a chance to ask questions. It's set up in a family room or something similar, with toys and books, and children can play. And again, a sort of debrief afterwards. I think the key word is safe. I think it's got to feel safe for everyone.
Absolutely, and even the home environment, because as you said before, it's not the home environment as well. Like when they let the person out and stuff, what's sort of in place from that point of view. Whereas, for us, I don't know if it's still the case, but 3 months stay, then sort of that person's better than back to normal, and sort of away you go. And you might have a social worker pop in every couple of weeks, but you still have a time frame where you're just alone with that person, and then I hope they do the right thing. But I was going to say, your opinion, what's your opinion with the whole mental health awareness movement? It's obviously a big thing in the last, let's say, 3 or 4 years, where it's a massive, there's a lot of mental health awareness. There's a lot of podcasts. There's a lot of people doing things about depression and anxiety. And there's all these organizations and charity things. But we both know that there's a lot more towards than just that sort of area. So what's your whole opinion on the mental health awareness movement, and where does it need to go next? Because if you look at the actual, let's say, suicide rate or for whatever, like even though there's all this awareness going on, it hasn't really declined at all or stayed around the same mark, especially the last five years. So what's your opinion on all that sort of awareness, and what's sort of the next step beyond that? Or where would you like to see it go?
Well, I think having an awareness about health generally. I mean, mental health is part of our overall health and well-being, and certainly we can learn a lot from our First Nations peoples about how mental health and well-being is part of overall. It's not separate; it's part of what happens in your life and how you experience. Whether it's mental health, it's all integrated. It's not a separate thing, and it's very much bound up. How we manage challenges is all bound up in our community, our spirituality, our friendships, the purpose and meaning in life. And I think I think sometimes some of that gets lost in translation in the mental health field, and we can focus too much on mental illness and mental health and not bring into account the whole of a person's life and all the things that impact on our well-being. And too many people live lonely, living with loneliness and in isolation and in poverty. So there's some social justice equity lens that I like to talk about as well, that whilst we have a system that's inequitable, that people are going to experience challenges to all kinds of their health, including their mental health. So I guess that's something that I feel strongly about. There should be more discussion about that. I think the other thing is that it's a very nuanced thing. It's at Satellite we talk about creativity a lot, and I think creativity is at the heart of everything that we do at Satellite. So our programs have got a creative focus, and that's about bringing conversations about mental health and well-being into a space where we offer creative platforms to have those conversations. And in doing that, it's saying, look, we know that you or they or people are, having really, it's not saying that they haven't got challenges with their mental health or that it's hard, but that there is other things that we can do in our lives that directly, not challenge, but directly address that in positive ways. So it's discovering parts of ourselves that are often hidden and can be very positive experiences for people in drawing awareness to that as well as the challenges. So in Satellite, people often say they didn't think they were a creative person. They say, I'm not a creative person, I can't do that. But when you do it very, very gently and carefully, it really helps people, I think, to see themselves in a different light. So I think that's important. And going back to my first comment, I think we just need to do better at, that whole idea of takes a village. It takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to, as you would know, to keep from your experience of being with, taking on the role you have with your mum, and the need for that to continue, that we need to be, I think, as a society, particularly in a Western society like Australia, a so-called developed country, we need to pay more attention to the scaffolding that's around each individual and the kind of outlets people have, the kind of positive input people have, the spaces where people feel listened to and validate. And that's not always mental health spaces. It's not mental health services. It could be a community garden. It could be a church group. It could be, a a relative of mine does a crocheting group, and that's been really important in turning around her mental health and well-being. So I think that's a bit of a rant, but that's how I feel. That's why I like being part of a community-based organisation now, because not saying that we don't need, we do need clinical mental health services for people who need that kind of intensive support. But and with the new Mental Health Act, the words well-being are coming in, are now part of the language that's being used by the government and by the Department of Health, which is really amazing.
Well, I think the integrated stuff you said about health is really important. I think, we want, you're right, you're bang on, like we want to treat mental health awareness as this separate thing to physical health and to all these other things. Whereas we know, are you eating well? Are you exercising, doing these basic things, drinking plenty of water, relate directly to your mental health? Yet sometimes when someone says I'm feeling down or whatever, we just want to, these things sort of aren't even mentioned or even brought into it. And the community aspect's really important. I know for me growing up, playing team sports was very important because I didn't have a dad or anything. So having that male sort of figure there, take an interest in you, and you get a bit of self-confidence from being in a team and things like that was hugely important, right? And even that doesn't directly relate to helping me on the home front. It really did. Well, it did help me in a lot of life, and it wasn't directly related to that, but that was that integrated health of having a community aspect and not being lonely or anything like that. You're always being busy and things like that. Whereas you're right, the support around the person and is so important, because I remember when we were in Perth, we didn't have any relatives there. So when mum went in a psych ward, we'd be with the foster family or foster home or whatever. And I was starting to get in a lot of trouble at school. Then when we moved to Warrnambool, my mum was one of 11. When she went there, we used to go to grandma's house or aunties and uncles, and we had people actually around us who actually cared now, and we knew that. And then I sort of went from probably going to, I reckon if I stayed in Perth, I would have been in jail by the time I was 18, compared to having that sea change. Same circumstance with at home, but just having that extra community around you and that support and stuff, really, just made the world of difference. And there'd be a lot of people who don't have that, who would then have that adverse outcome.
Yeah.
Whereas, having something like Satellite, for example, whereas you had that spread across Australia, for example, or other organisations similar to it, that would just make a world of difference. And, government's all about money as well. If you look at the money, having someone in jail, having someone not be a productive member of society over 60 years or 50 years compared to maybe if we had a bit of intervention when they were younger, the future financial saving, I know it's not a financial thing we're talking about, but from an economic point of view, it just makes so much sense to have that integrated health, that community with young people from a young age, just financially for the economy. It just makes a hell of a lot of sense if you think long term, as opposed to, let's say, the 3 to 4 year election cycle, whatever it is.
Spot on, Joel.
But I love turning the integrated health, because as I said, I see the mental health awareness. As you would know, you're competing for funding against all these other things. Whereas, sometimes I feel we don't stick to the basic stuff when we're talking about mental health. As you said, the community stuff, the full integrated health solution, and loneliness is a big thing and stuff like that. How do we get these people connected and stuff? So that's stuff that sort of doesn't go really said, especially when I watch a lot of the when I see it talked about a lot.
And something that we can do at Satellite, I think, in going back to this idea of the village, and that's a beautiful story about you moving from Perth to Warrnambool and having that almost like a tribe of people that you were able to, that absorbed you and provided a safe space for you. And
we had to, because what was happening was my mum kept going into a psych ward, and then because my dad was not in the scene, he was working overseas, my mum's brothers and sisters didn't know. So my mum didn't tell them about anything going on.
Yeah.
So they didn't know. And then once they found out, the grandma just paid for us uncle to drive over and basically bring us back, because that kept happening all the time. And I really, really adamant, if that didn't happen when I was 13, I reckon I would have been in jail or would have been dead or some sort of bad things. I wasn't on a good path. So, but it's hugely important.
Yeah, it isn't. And I think part of that also, what organisations like Satellite and others can do is actually really try and support family where it's appropriate, like your story, to sort of provide support to the young person, to sort of be understand what they can do as extended family and community to provide that sort of scaffolding and that buffer for that young person. Whether it's a place to go and live, or we all want purpose and meaning in our life. That's critical for human beings. We have to have purpose and meaning. And so, because sometimes families can get, very fractured in these circumstances for all kinds of reasons. And that's often, it's complex, that, but not all families stay together, and not all young people want contact with their families because that might be the source of the trauma that they might have experienced. So, but I think it's important that as services, it's also time. We take the time to find out who is in this person's life. At what level. I'm making signs. I don't know if this is going to be, you can see me, but if you've got the young person in the middle, well, what are the kind of the rings around them, and how far out do they go, and what can they provide? And are there people out there that haven't been supported to provide support to this young person or this family? So, and that requires time. And up until now, services just haven't had the time to do that kind of work often.
So I think your organisation, as you said, everyone's got to have a purpose, right? Whether they find a purpose in their job or they've got a hobby, whatever it is. But your organisation, Satellite, if someone doesn't have that community around them, it provides an instant community. And I've met some of the people, heard about some of the people who are involved in Satellite, and you can see, like, if they didn't have Satellite around them, that community, like, who knows what would be happening to these young people. And that's a massive concern. Like, it's fantastic that the organisation is doing this, but like, you think, well, why isn't there not more money, or why isn't there not more organisations? Because mental health awareness is everywhere now, but doing this sort of stuff, because it's so bloody important, because it just has that direct impact to these kids' lives, and as a being productive long-term member of society. And without it, who knows what would happen to some of these people. Do you sort of understand, like, does that sort of make sense towards some of the people involved in Satellite?
Look, I think, yes, I do. Of course, I do believe that we, as an organisation, we provide a space for young people to come and feel valued, and to feel heard, and to have their voice amplified, and to gain some, to gain some knowledge and skills, and make friendships. Absolutely. And in an ideal world, probably we wouldn't need as much, because if it was a really equitable society, and that meant that people's health and well-being was truly, people were able to attend to their health and well-being in a really meaningful way, not just their mental health, but their overall health and well-being, there would be less of a need for organisations like Satellite, maybe, but I think we're a long way off that. And I think that it would be, in our planning, sometimes we dream about going national. Maybe one day we might, become a national organisation. My vision is that it doesn't matter what, Victoria, that, ultimately it doesn't matter where you live, what part of Victoria, and maybe then Australia where you live, you would know exactly where to go when you need it most, and get what you want, not something that's not a good fit, and it's free, and it's got beautiful, a whole range of different programs is a funny word, but I guess call them programs for now, that cater for a whole lot of different needs and wants, and provide a positive experience, and where they meet other young people, and to provide those pathways for those young people to go on, like I was saying before, to really to spread their wings, because they've all got these beautiful wings, to spread their wings and find their path in life. And I have no doubt that the experiences that people like you have had are extraordinarily powerful in shaping them into being, really important and valued and compassionate members of society.
Well, I definitely think they are.
Really.
I don't think anyone who could have a parent with mental illness not have, high level of empathy or resilience and stuff. But you might not realize that until you get a lot older. So you might take a long time. But with Satellite, Rose, what are your plans? You've got some funding from the government, which is fantastic. So what are your plans on expanding Satellite? Is it more programs, more places for programs? What do you plan on doing?
Probably all of the above. So we're just 6 months in with the funding. So we've been running programs since then, of course. So we have a number of core programs that we will start to provide. We'll sort of start to double those in the second half of next year. Plus, introduce some new programs. So all our new programs will be co-created with the young people in the Satellite fold. and by co-creation, I mean that it'll either be an idea that one of them has had, and then we work with that young person to develop that into an actual offering. Or it might be we're in the process of, we've just taken on a youth coordinator who's beautiful, and she's only 21. And so part of her job will be establishing our youth advisory, working title, youth advisory group. And they will be at the heart of what we do. So really expanding and growing the voices of lived experience and amplifying the voices of young people in satellite, both within us and then out to the outside world. So also reaching more into schools and, potentially partnering with other organisations that already work in schools, not adding, replicating, but bringing in a sort of special brand of satellite into those programs. There's a number of new programs that we're thinking about and running more. So at the moment we run one camp a year, and we'll be slowly increasing. The camps are very popular. We'll run 2 camps in this calendar year, and then 2022-23 we'll be aiming at running 4. So just expanding, but we'll still offer a both in-person and online programs. Who knows what will happen with the online, with the in-person, but and all our programs, as I said, have got a creative focus. So we have a workshop called Create and Connect, which is a day workshop where we go and offer that in a particular place, so like a location with young people. I'm also very keen to do more, have young people take part in, podcasts and webinars, and really privileging the voices of young people, because they're the ones with the answers, and also families. So, we have a family liaison worker. We're bringing in another person. So we're busy recruiting as well. And we're just about to take on an external evaluation team. We're just in the middle of interviewing for that, so that we will be able to demonstrate that hopefully by the end of the 4 years that what we do is worthwhile and value. You mentioned value for money. I think that's really important.
I remember talking to Addie about that, and trying to show I can't remember what she was saying, trying to show impact or measure impact. Yeah, which impact, I just found it's such a no-brainer. Like, I understand you've got to show it like on paper, but like for me, like how you logically, just from using a deductive reasoning, not know that would have an impact. Like, I remember reading a report to the commission, Bipolar Australia, done a submission to the Royal Commission. They quoted a figure that their estimated bipolar cost to the economy, I think it's like $7 billion or something in 1 year. That's with all the hospitalizations, missed sick days, all this sort of stuff. And I just couldn't believe, well, that's the financial problem. Like, so I know that you have to do it, but like, I just can't believe even why you have to do it from my perspective. But yeah, I'm sure you'll be able to demonstrate it, but it's just, yeah.
Well, I think it's critically important for us at this time for satellite, because we've been funded by the Victorian government, and that's taxpayers' money. And we take that very, very, very seriously. And so we really want to work our hardest to demonstrate to the government, and therefore the taxpayers and the public, that this is what we've done, and this is what has been most useful and has made a difference over the 4 years. And some parts of what's being evaluated, it's hard to measure, because you're looking at trying to, from children and young people, a whole set of surveys and instruments doesn't really cut the mustard. So I'm looking forward to being really that process, to being really creative in the same way that we are. Got lots of ideas about how we can do that. So yeah, that's we're also in the middle of doing that. And training the facilitators to run the programs. Half of them will be peer facilitators. So yeah, it's busy expanding with responsibly, so we don't grow too quickly. You've got to grow, but you've got to do it mindfully.
There's always scaling problems when you try and put on a lot of people, and exactly. Scaling up. Scaling up. But I was going to say, because what I'd love for satellite to be is like that brand, all right? So obviously, if people think of depression or anxiety, they think Beyond Blue most likely. Whereas if you've got parents got a mental illness with a kid, satellite. That's almost where I'd love to see it go. Whereas, especially schools, I think schools is the key. If a teacher knows what's I've got this kid who's got this, what's the resource, or what website, or what can I actually do from it? And if they can instantly start having that recognition and go bang, like what's your plan to get at teachers? Is it to do stuff on LinkedIn, for example, where a lot of teachers are, to connect with teachers online, put content in there, or how are you going to plan to get into the teachers? I think that's a really important one, because they will know, especially in primary school, they will know, in high school, they will know probably most likely which kids have got these situations.
Yeah. So we're certainly making some good connections with the Department of Education, and we need to be very mindful that there's some great work happening in schools across a range of different organizations. So again, not duplicating what other people are doing, but really tailoring it to this particular group of young people. So we did a small pilot at a school, which just wrapped up recently, with some students across E-levels actually, who had been identified by the wellbeing coordinators having a parent with mental health challenges. We think that actually more of a universal approach in schools, where you talk to the whole year level about these kinds of issues with a very careful and safe way for students who might identify as having a family member with a mental illness to then contact us, Satellite, or another organisation, because speaking up in school is hard. For many young people, a lot of young people actually, school is their safe haven. It's a place they go to get away from worrying about their mum or their dad. So we want to walk that line between saying, well, we want to go into schools and talk about what might be happening, and to sort of invite young people into our spaces without them feeling really fearful, or feeling they're going to be bullied, or they're going to be laughed at. So I think we're having those conversations right now, and I think going through the student wellbeing network, the wellbeing coordinators, and the student support services, and the wellbeing and there's mental health practitioners in secondary schools. There's BU. There's a whole lot of contacts to be in, relationships to be carefully developed, to make sure that we get our messages out there and our conversations out there without doubling up.
Come a long way in the 2 years, I reckon, since I've sort of known about it, or 2-3 years. Like, it's definitely moved a lot. Like, even with your staff and like the website and all that sort of stuff, it's fantastic how quickly it's going and all that sort of thing. I'll let you go after one question. Just going to say, why do you do it then? It's a lot of time, especially back, you've been doing it for a long, long time, and you've had sort of recently this recognition, but the good work you do, but now you're getting this sort of external government, sort of approval as well. So why do you do what you do? Because it's a hell of a lot of time, and you're very, very busy. What do you get out of it?
Because my family would say I'm stubborn, but I just say I'm determined, because stubborn's a bit of a loaded word. Look, I landed on this. I trained as an occupational therapist back in 1977 to 1980, and part of that training was in psychiatry, and it landed in my brain and in my heart, and I just thought, this is what I want to do, because it felt it's that social justice, that sort of inequity lens that even as a young person back then, I felt so outraged by it. So there's an outrage that I feel sometimes still when I think about the blame and assumptions that people make about mental health and well-being is the first thing, probably. And look, more recently, to be honest, I think hearing having conversations with young people that I've known for a long time, and the stories they talk about being part of the programs that we did when they were children, then to adolescents, and the really, one day I'll write it up, but I will, because the extraordinary impact it had on their lives, and what it meant to them to have that place, to meet other kids, to meet positive people in their lives, whether it was, someone like me or the people with whom I worked. This is way before Satellite. That's important. That's important for anyone to have someone who believes in them, someone who is a teacher or believes in them and their worth and their family member, their parents' worth, and doesn't judge and just sees a future for them. And because I'm a very optimistic person, that's how I did it. That's how I always engaged in the main in conversation, not in a sort of Pollyanna-ish way, but just, yeah. So I think that's more recently been very, very powerful for me to reconnect with them. And the other thing that, Joel, the other thing is people like you. It's people that believe in this area of work and are prepared to be open and be vulnerable and share their stories, whether it's I've got the most amazing team at Satellite, absolutely incredible young people. And by sharing stories, then you've done so much through your Lived Experience podcast to get those messages out there and, to make a difference.
A hell of a lot more.
It's all about making
mine's very small. I'm just doing it because, as I said, I get frustrated when there's all this mental health awareness, which is fantastic, and integrated health is just talking about. It just focuses on this one area of it, and there's so much more, and there's other areas to it. But we just need more people, let's say like Greg Hunt and other people like that, actually promoting their services and stuff like that. Because there's probably a lot of well-known people, and like Brad McEwen, for example, what he does is fantastic. Like, he's fantastic. Like, I'm just a small podcast, and he said, no worries, and traveled all that way just to do that. Whereas, a lot of other people who probably got maybe a similar experience to Brad just don't share it at all, and in a position of prominence, which I think is doing a massive disservice because it's so powerful to have people like that share it and be so open with it.
It is, yeah, it is, yeah. The more, the better.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Rose. Really appreciate it.
That's
I'll
a pleasure,
put all the links
Joel.
to everything in Satellite, so I didn't really say because I'm just going to put them all in the descriptions and stuff like that. So I'll put all the links there and social media and all that sort of stuff. And you're a very special person, so thanks for doing what you do, Rose. It's a massive difference what you do, and I'm real passionate about what you guys do because I just know I never had the benefit or the fortunate to do a program, but I just know it would have helped me, even though I might not have said that at the time if I was doing it. Because I was a pretty stubborn kid and pretty surly and stuff, but it would have definitely really, really made a massive positive impact. So hopefully, the Satellite message and the brand just keeps getting bigger and stronger and gets a lot more money. When it comes to get some more funding, hopefully gets a hell of a lot more, and we get your message out there. And you're making direct impact in people's lives, which I don't think a lot of people can say. So it's fantastic, and by yourself and the team. And thanks for your time. I really appreciate it, Rose.
It's a pleasure, Joel. You take care, and thank you again. Okay, bye for now.